Press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from News Laundry.
Welcome to NL Interviews. Today we have with us Manu Joseph, journalist and novelist, and he's a columnist with Mint Lounge now. He was earlier columnist with International New York Times. He has written 3 very powerful novels, I would say. One, the heavily awarded Serious Men, and perhaps more impactful, The Illicit Happiness of Other People. And now his 3rd novel is out, that is Miss Laila, Armed and Dangerous. Apart from these two professions, whenever he finds time, he writes very nice travel pieces. You can read some of them. I think one was on chadar trekking that you wrote for Sea and Traveller. Now, while introducing Manu, what you should be very careful about is that you should not precede it with a veteran. So, in fact, he dreads it or hates that. So, in a recent news story in Mumbai Mirror, which was, as he says, generous to him, the journalist introduced him as a veteran journalist. So, he dreads that word.
That's now, only because I think only old people are called veteran, but
okay, so he's
maybe that's technically not correct.
So that is his fight against age. Also, he has a particular order when you are introducing him. He wants to first being introduced as a journalist, then writer. So in 2013, perhaps, when his Illicit came, someone asked him, and his reply was that there is a boyish embarrassment in saying what you want to become. But is it still an embarrassment in becoming what you wanted to become?
A boyish embarrassment in saying what you want to become. Right? Yeah, that embarrassment would always be there because there seems to be something naive about wanting to get somewhere when you're not 10 years old.
Okay. Now, this is perhaps your only literary work when you were not a full-time journalist. I think you started writing it in 2014.
Yes.
When you left Open.
Yes, you're right.
And Manu was also editor of Open during those heady Radia tapes expose. Did that make any difference in how you approached this work, contrasting it to when you were a full-time journalist?
Yes, I think I was a much nicer person while writing this book because I had time. I was not behaving badly when I was writing it because I had, as I said, I had all the time. Serious Men was almost entirely written in the offices of Times of India. In fact, I'm slightly nervous to mention it because I realized that my contract with Times of India says that any kind of any creative work done during my tenure with them, and actually I may have to share with them. So actually I'm going to take back what I said. Maybe I didn't write Serious Men in Times of India's office. I wrote it elsewhere. So I'm going to be very ambiguous about that. And Illicit, of course, I did take a 6-month sabbatical, but you can't write a novel in 6 months. At least I can't. That helped a bit. In fact, it was a fully paid sabbatical. Open was very generous, though I would go to the office or take calls. But in this case, though I was writing more journalism than ever, I had 5 columns a month when I was writing Miss Laila because I was writing for the New York Times, and I had 3 columns a month for Hindustan Times. But still, the act of not going to office, the act of not having to commute gave me a lot of time. So I think I was best behaved, and that's the review at home also. I got the feeling that I was more relaxed. I was not racing against time. Of course, I was impatient on some days to finish it. I would say it was very difficult because writing a novel is very difficult, but maybe pleasant to some extent.
Would you like to distinguish this work, Miss Laila, Armed and Dangerous, as the most political of your novels?
You know, that's a very interesting question. Overtly, it is political. Because there are these Hindu nationalists and of course the liberals and all those types. But I would argue that Serious Men is as political because it gets into the Dalit anger and the rage in a very personal way. So I would say maybe they are equally political.
Maybe its political resonance is more because of its link to contemporary themes.
Yes, it's very contemporary.
And Serious Men's politics is more universal.
Exactly, so I could not escape it. In fact, strangely, I want to escape topicality and news in my journalism. So I would have expected myself to write something else. I wanted to. In fact, I didn't want to be topical. I didn't want to be contemporary. I didn't want to write about characters I'm not very fond of. I wanted to write about characters I can argue with and deeply respect in some complex way. But I couldn't. It's about times. I could not get rid of it. I had to write this, and and maybe to compensate, maybe I'll write something which is 1,000 years old. My fourth novel will probably be 1,000 years old, because I feel there's something about the idea of news. I feel we are all in its spell. In fact, I would argue that if you really stop reading newspapers, and if you limit your consumption of news, you may not be very well informed by some measures, but I think that you will improve a different kind of intelligence. You'll begin to acquire a very different kind of intelligence.
You may transcend immediacy of something.
It is not only the immediacy, where a quick analysis is often meaningless in the long run. And I feel that truth often has a longer arc. And many of these hysterical reactions and analysis are wrong, like this objection to free basics, or the myth that if you evict that a Dalit activist committed suicide just because he was evicted from a university. So there are a lot of these passionate myths that are supported by news. They appear to be supported by facts, but then we often see a distinction between facts and truth.
One of the motives that seems to have guided you, that you wanted to transcend the topicality that somehow defined your journalism. So journalism is somehow constricted by topicality, and the novel gives you the larger canvas of imagining things which a particular character is thinking, and that you cannot put in your journalism.
Yes.
So about a lot of things that you analyze in your everyday observations of politics, activism, or human behavior in general, now gave you a platform for putting it through your literary devices.
Yeah, but to me, a novel is much more than a platform, because it's such a complex, beautiful, difficult thing. So I would say it is. To me, it can't be something as simple as a platform.
No,
it is,
now this one, particularly this one.
So yeah, as I was saying, it is beyond a platform. It's a thing in itself. But what was the second part of your question?
Means through literary devices, you had a form of expression through which you could analyze the thought process of key characters.
Yes. So that's one thing where that journalism does not allow. You can't get inside the mind of a person. You're not allowed to get inside the mind of a person. So I feel that there is, as a writer of fiction, you can get inside the mind of a person, but it is very interesting to still be journalistic inside a person, where if a person is, say, analytical or concerned with facts, it can be a very interesting exercise.
Okay, now in Serious Men, your point was that you are hiding behind pillars to say something. So it was a work of an underdog coming out of urban poverty and had things to say about.
He's not coming out, he's still poor. Yeah.
He is poor, but you were coming out of urban poverty,
yes, that is true.
And you were using the hindsight to say things.
Yes, I found a character I was sympathetic to.
Yes. So, and Illicit was a review of your disdain for autobiographical novels. So you reviewed your position and
Yes.
thought that it is best to write one.
Yes.
So now in this one, have you gone back to serious men and have somehow taken the shelter of pillars to say things like one, say, character of Akila Iyer, or to an extent even the patriarch? Some of his views are similar to what you write in your columns, not to be confused with what is projected.
I can answer, but then most of your readers may not have read the book. So, do you want to tell them who Akila is and who the?
Yeah. So Akila is a neurosurgeon, and she does pranks on left liberals, on even the rightist leaders, and Manu uses those pranks to expose the fault lines in the arguments that these people have. And Akila has a very, what you can say, a very quirky side to how see things and sees things, and that is prank is elevated to a form of literary device. In fact, the novel has a point that the whole republic is a prank. Yes. And people think that they can get away with anything. Yes. So, but ultimately the prank has to be found out.
Yes.
So
the analysis of this girl's prank as a literary device is absolutely spot on. In fact, that is what I was trying to get at. That is why the Hindu nationalist ideologue is actually, if you look at it, it's a review of her pranks. Okay, it's a cultural review of her pranks. That is what the ideologue does, and he tries to be neutral in his position in how he observes what she does. Okay, so what's your question?
So no, my question was it a literary device?
That is true. Yes.
Okay. So now the second thing is that it also suits the genre of your writing, that combining insightful observations with entertainment.
Yes.
So things may not get too heavy.
Yes.
And the pranks, funny as they are very insightful.
Yes.
So you consciously choose that.
Yes.
Is that?
In the sense that is, it is hard to separate many of the strands. But what I try to do is I seek what is it among the many important things that I believe in, what is it that I want to say. But I'm also a storyteller. We can't just look at it as, only as journalistically, I also want to tell stories, and I have certain idea of a story as a fascinating thing. Someone going to the market or someone combing their hair is not story, and someone doing a monologue in their head is not a story. Story for 10,000 years of human existence was always an interesting event. An interesting event, or at least a remarkable event. So that's what I try to achieve. And also I feel that every time I feel that I have something important to say, I also feel the need. I don't think everybody needs to feel that, but I feel the need to reach out to people. And my way of reaching out is to also tell a story. That is the only form of humility I accept consciously in myself. I'm sure there are other forms of humility, I hope there are, but this is something where I said, okay, fine, because I think we all need to find our kind of humility, But Sachin Tendulkar's kind of humility is kind of, to me, I don't accept that. So it's just coming across as a nice person. But I think there could be other deeper forms of humility which are beyond posturing that can be quite interesting for us to experiment with, and it can help us do some things better. So reaching out when I have something important to say is, I would say that is my way of being humble.
You have specifically targeted certain sections of social opinion through different pranks. First is the white beard, which is a take on the right wing. Then there is how feminist men have sex.
Chiefly the argument would be men who claim to be feminists without the experience of being in a female body and then making a statement which is too facile for me to accept.
Then there is costliest building in the world or something like that.
Yeah.
The costliest building in the world, that is a take on Arundhati Roy. And then there is the longest hunger strike in the world about Irom Sharmila School of Activism.
Yes.
Was it your experience with the cabals of Delhi intelligentsia?
Oh, not just Delhi, they're all over the place. In fact, they're better known in Delhi because maybe Indian activism was headquartered in Delhi, but not anymore. It is also because I also think they're important. I also think the walls that we erect in journalism between corporations and journalism, I think those walls should also exist between activism and journalism. I also feel that activism has infested art and literature, and to some extent I can understand why that happens. Okay, I'm not too surprised, but the colonization of some aspects of art. So these things obviously are of interest to me, but at the same time I feel that the activism is also extremely important. That is one important level of defense that we have against very, very powerful forces who are powerful not because of genius, who are powerful because of many other things apart from genius, which includes luck. But because activism has such moral course, it just goes out of control. You know, they can say anything and there is no challenge. And most of the time people are scared to challenge what seems to be moral. So I think these are some of the themes I try to.
Also, you say that in the duel, in fight between good and evil, the good is recruiting poorly. So, and the evil in evil, the brightest rise.
Yeah.
So, is it also about the nepotism and cabals?
Yes. As a system, what has happened is that in the worlds that the good occupies are also invariably very subjective worlds. A certain class of people control all the cards. So I feel that there is a problem. There is a problem there because it's also a very important fight. It's an important battle. I feel that if your brightest people don't have the opportunity to rise to a level to directly fight the evil, if they're going to be under the thumb of just some bunch of lucky people who are probably inspired by some West European ideals, I think that's extremely dangerous.
So, also there are very thinly disguised characters in it. So, did you fear that people would easily identify them, and or was it also an alternative that you couldn't say like that in your journalism? You can put it here, like Damodar Bhai, so, or say the Blackbeard, or even the AK could be easily AD. So, anyway.
I don't know how you arrived from AK to AD, but yeah, I understand. Yeah. I don't know. I just wanted to use that device. I just found it because now the Indian reality is far more powerful and fascinating than fiction. So if I'm going to derive from reality, I don't see why I should change too much. Though having said that, all characters are fictitious.
Okay.
Any resemblance is purely coincidental.
Also, the conclusions that you have derived at the end of the novel. Now, that is also something that you cannot do in journalism because it has to go through a judicial scrutiny.
Yes.
That is, in fact, an alternative for that. Means your conclusions are very clear about a particular incident that we should not give out here.
Yes.
So, but it was also an escape from judicial scrutiny of the conclusions.
Yes. Yes. So that's one of the good things about literature. You don't need a judge to arrive at justice.
Yeah.
You know, so you can just find it. You can just fabricate justice. Sometimes I feel that is the only way you can find justice in fiction. you know.
Some of the most striking characters in your novels have been child characters. Now, here also, when you talk about Laila, her younger sister, Aisha, now it is through her that you convey the sense of her family. Similarly, you did that elicit through Thoma Chako. Has it to do with your plot or or how you were brought up? You analyzed your family so clearly when you were young?
I think we all have a very good and clear analysis of our family, honestly. That's why we don't talk about it, because I think it would be quite shocking to everybody if we spoke the truths about people who are closest to us. Though writers have no choice but to do it. You just change some names. No, this is about, I just like children. I like the idea of children. And I know for a fact that you don't have to be condescending when you are talking to them, or when you're talking about them, or when you're talking through them. So it gives me a very different kind of a language. And I like that when the process of writing is so difficult, that when I come to this, I like the process of writing when I'm writing through children. And there are some kinds of writing which have become a bit easy for me, like a certain dark male humor, a certain male point of view of a situation, and the need to arrive at a certain accurate description of a few things. So it gets a bit tiring even for me, actually. That's one of the reasons why the two of the lead characters in this book are women.
So,
because to me that was a literary challenge.
What was it a response to what some people interpreted serious men as misogynist?
No, the people who interpreted serious men as misogynist, I don't take them very seriously. I hope someone does. So it is not important for me to respond to such a low level of analysis of a novel. And also, I don't think they are very flattering portrayal of womanhood.
Coming to your parallel profession, journalism. Now, many of the things that have surfaced here also, or that surface in your columns, have the stamp of an outsider analyzing something on which insiders have some monopolies of commentary. And your peculiar take has been somehow dismissed as frivolous, funny, entertaining, comical, with a very borrowed sense of importance. Means, like your take on Aadhaar or farmer suicide, on Aadhaar particularly. Naresh Fernandez.
I know only one intellectual who said it was comical.
Naresh
in the form
Fernandez,
of, so nobody else.
Editor of his Scrolls,
Yes.
said that Mint is done well with a humor column.
No, my response was that the right wing, when they don't like something that they do, they're pretty direct. They just come and beat you up or physically harm you, which is a bad thing, of course. But left liberals like Naresh Fernandez, who pretend to stand for freedom of expression, they keep defaming you, they malign you, and they try to insult you in these forms. And so that was my response. That's exactly what I told them.
Okay, and what kind of response that you got after the cover story on the Tarunti Isbal,
Yes.
Alice rape?
Yes.
So was it a kind of eye-opener to you about your assumptions about the gladiators of freedom of expression?
I'm never surprised by the gladiators of freedom of expression because I always knew that what they meant by freedom of expression is that they want to protect what is suitable to them, and when they encounter a point of view that they do not like, they are as nasty as the other side. It's just that they are not as powerful as the other side, which keeps you alive. But I feel that many times I felt that if they had the power to physically harm you, they seem to be the kind of people who would. Let's not forget that, say, putting someone in jail or trying to put someone in jail is as bad as physically harming that person. Okay, just because you can hide behind law and say that, oh no, we are only trying to egg the legal system into acting against you, and also this trying to professionally destroy you. You know, some of the tweets or mails that they try to send the editor of Lounge or the editor of Mint, you know, clearly suggesting how can you carry this guy's. So that is trying to deny a person's livelihood, you know, and these people may not have thugs coming after you, okay, but they are thugs themselves. You know, when you piss them off, they are thugs. So I'm never surprised. I mean, I've seen this in many forms. You know, it's just that when I was a reporter, it's just that I've been a commentator.
So you retorted by saying that these people are so thin-skinned that you can make a condom out of them.
The very perfect condom.
Yeah, very perfect condom
Yes.
out of them. Okay.
So this battle of freedom of expression, I mean, I don't take it that seriously because I'm not so convinced that the champions themselves stand for those values. But what I know is that there are a lot of people in this world are actually silent. They are the readers. I know the readers, and the readership that I have, be it in the novels or through my commentary, is disproportionate to the acclaim that the establishment would kind of want to give you. So I have the readers.
So they see you as someone who is punching above his weight.
No, it is just that their reaction to me is not generous, but the reaction of the readers to me is far more generous than most people realize.
Maybe because you have found the better ways of saying it, and for which they have disdain. You can combine very insightful commentary with entertainment, with the way you deliver it.
I hope so. I mean, that's nice of you to say that. But I'm reminded of a moment when I was interviewing Shoaib Akhtar, when I was with Open Magazine. And Shoaib Akhtar was a person, he is not a very deep person, but very, very interesting, fascinating man. But he said one thing which was very philosophical. In fact, after that moment, in my mind, I often try to understand a stranger. And that was the first time I was interviewing him, so he was a stranger to me. I always try to understand a stranger by who would this guy be in my class, my 5th standard class? What would be his personality type? And I immediately knew he was that philosophical thug, you know. The thug was also a nice, endearing guy, philosophical.
Oh, that Imran Khan Oxford University thing.
Yes, that during that thing. But then what Shoaib Akhtar told me was that, you know, everybody can see through a face. He said that they may not be able to articulate it like intellectuals. You know, they may not be able to articulate it in a very intelligent way, but everybody can see through you. A face, a human face. In fact, that's what the human face is meant for, to be seen through. I thought that was a very, I mean, once you hear it, I mean, it seems like a very, very obvious perspective to have, that all the things that what sophistication tries to do is to conceal, while this man claims that the face, no matter what you do, the face reveals. Similarly, I think for most people it is that, for most readers who don't have an agenda, who don't have anything complicated, they just want to read, they can see through a person, and they can see through a column which is just a projection of one fraction of a person. So I think maybe sometimes I'm a beneficiary of that, the generosity of people who are willing to look a bit deeper than ideologies that they are meant to possess.
And you also have used your journalistic experiences in novels, like this one. I think one of your assignments for Outlook magazine was to cover Gujarat earthquakes, and the debris sheen.
Yes.
Has largely benefited from the insights you...
You're absolutely right. One of the most powerful experiences I had as a journalist was when I was 24 or 25. I covered the Gujarat earthquake. In fact, one of the first people we met, the photographer Prashant Panjiyar and I, we didn't know how bad the calamity was. And then we heard that there is some tank somewhere and there are a lot of injured people who are around that lake or a pond, and we were asking this man for directions. Then he told us that his entire family is under the rubble outside which he is standing, and every 3-4 hours he could hear them, but still he is able to give us directions. He's saying left, right. So, and also we 2-3 days later we saw a man sitting on top of an almara trying to open the top part of it, and we asked, and there's a body right under the cupboard on which the cupboard is standing, and that turned out to be his younger brother's body, but he is on top of the cupboard taking out the money and other things because the Indian army was coming to rescue, and he thought the soldiers are going to steal his money. So people behave in fascinating ways in the face
also
of calamity.
In that piece said that how army officer decided to suspend night operations,
Yes.
like it was a banality for him. So.
It was not, it's just that they didn't have a choice. They didn't have the equipment, they didn't have the lights, and it was a dangerous thing to do. In fact, one of my great regrets is that I didn't go down the tunnel because they had this man they were trying to rescue in the debris. And they said that they will tie me up and if I want to go. But I just couldn't bring myself to do that.
Okay, coming back to your position in, say, commentary, or now there are some similarities as well as differences with what you wrote as an obituary to Binod Mehta, that he could be a part of conversation but not to do peacock dance to demarcate territories.
Yes.
But the difference is that he was fascinated by the intellectual gas chambers in Delhi, that obviously you are not. So do you see some kind of resonance of him in the way?
No, actually, in my view, we are very different people. Though it's interesting that a lot of people have asked me that. I respected him, I liked him, but we are very different people. Though I must tell you that I don't think intellectuality is always a gas chamber. It is just that, as I said, it is so important to us at some level that we should always keep a pressure on them. And in fact, that is a parallel kind of power. And when we are speaking truth to power, as they keep saying, truth to power, there's no point in speaking truth to power to Modi alone, because there are other more powerful establishments. In fact, it is probably more dangerous for a lot of writers to take on the liberal establishment than the Modi establishment. So sometimes I feel that speaking truth to power would make more sense when you also take on the liberal establishment that talk nonsense.
Also the review mechanism, if a particular approach to fighting the so-called evil is not working, so let us review the recruitment process for it. So
exactly. Now I feel that, for example, one of the examples I can give, what I mean by, see now, for example, you can see that as a character in the book argues that evil is an equal opportunity society. That's why it does well. While good is too subjective and there's too much nepotism in those areas that the good has taken over. So what is my solution? Let's say if you ask me what is your solution, I feel that, like say in India, it's very clear that if you want to make a serious change, you have to enter electoral politics, which is a very difficult thing to do.
now, Manu, one of your novels, in fact the first novel, is being adapted into a film.
Yes.
Now see, like Sudhir Mishra is making Serious Men, and I think in the Bombay Mirror piece also, or the report, you are keen on seeing how monologues translate on a screen. And Serious Men, the most powerful part of the books is when Ayan Mani is having a conversation with himself.
Yes.
So I think one of the contributors or staff on Open, Madhavan Kutti, he had once written why great books don't make great films, and that was the principal reason he gave, that you cannot make monologues into engaging scenes. Is that your concern now?
Not at all. In fact, I feel that if people try to be too faithful to a novel, in fact, I feel that great novels don't become great movies because movie makers are intimidated by great novels and they try to be too faithful to the novel, which I don't think should be the approach in a movie. I think the film should take a strand of the book, or if you're taking the whole story, you can't deal with a novel. People realize the complexity of a novel only when they try to make a movie out of it, and they just figure we can't do this, we can't show this, how do we show this? In fact, one of the interesting things would be that people think that they know Iron Money's character because a book can just say it, but then a film has to show it. So I feel that
the visualization of
it has to be very different, and I'm not someone who would have problems if the film makes some very intelligent departures from the book.
Now, coming back to this book, it is somehow tailor-made for a film, so it can make an engaging film. But how you translate statements like this, that Damodar Bhai is neither right or wrong, but he is a sacred thought which people already had?
Yes, maybe don't have it, or you can have a character saying it in a dialogue when he's having chai. So I don't think these are, it's just, do you need it? Do you need Damodar Bhai at all for a movie version of this book? That's also an interesting question. In fact, that's what I mean. It depends on how a person wants to, if a person wants to do everything that the book tried to do, that could be problematic. It can work, but it can also be problematic.
Okay. Your second novel, as you are on record saying that you are in talks with also having a cinematic version of it, the Illicit. Is that correct?
Right now I'm in talks for TV.
TV series on
Yes.
it.
Not film.
Do you plan to get it into film?
Illicit?
No, this one.
Yeah, I would. I'm in talks actually. Yeah, we've got.
When can we expect that?
That I don't know. No, I don't know when that would happen. But I hope in the next few months there's an announcement about who's making it. And
after working for, say, in the media space last 3 years, just as a columnist, do you have any plans to go back to full-time journalism?
I hope I don't have to go back to full-time journalism in the form of swiping a card and going into an office and having bad chai or something like that. But I miss people, strangely now. I miss listening to people and how people are and everything. But I'm actually also might start something, but it's not very clear right now. I would know in the next few weeks.
Okay. So one thing is that you have lived now a good part of your life in North India. Why didn't North India find its way to one of your novels?
That's a very interesting question, be it the place or the people. I don't know how to write them. Like, for example, for the longest time, I didn't know how to write women characters. In fact, a lot of guys talk about, oh, you just write men and guests or change your name. But that's not how it works for me. I think you should really know what they are going through, or how they are thinking. Like, for example, I couldn't write children until I had my own. That's why in Serious Men, there is the point of view of the little boy is non-existent just for one page, because I was very intimidated by the idea of a child. I didn't know how children would say things or how they would think, but in Illicit I didn't have a problem. Like this one, I was totally confident with the little girl, because I know exactly, how little girls would say many things and how they think now. So similarly, I don't have the confidence to write a Bihari or a UPite. What about Gurgaon? Gurgaon set as a story set in Gurgaon. It's very difficult to describe. I don't have the vocabulary or the technique to describe Gurgaon. Like you would not know the difference between Gurgaon and Nagpur when I write about it. So that's the problem. When Gurgaon was being built, I did do a story for Times of India when I was an outsider to Gurgaon. Actually, it's a very interesting question, that means, because I could then write, because Gurgaon was being built. and I was able to describe Gurgaon better. In fact, that story was called The Sudden Millionaires. All the villagers of Gurgaon, they became millionaires overnight because of the real estate boom. And what happened to them when they suddenly became rich was the story. But there was one paragraph where I could describe the physicality of Gurgaon, which I thought was interesting at that point. Now I won't be able to do it.
But after illicit in an interview, you were quite stubborn that your next novels are not coming out from Gurgaon. Means they would not have Gurgaon as a backdrop.
Yes.
So that's also a kind of lament.
About having to be there? Yeah, I suppose so. Though I'm beginning to enjoy some aspects of it, because it now has a Bombay feel to it, because a lot of people have fled from Bombay to Gurgaon, and it has a cosmopolitan feel to it. Though why we like cosmopolitan is a different issue altogether. Maybe that is a benign racism that we all have.
So while we can enjoy your third novel, we hope that your next would come from a different part of the country. Thank you for talking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching NL Interview. Pay to keep news free. Subscribe to News Laundry.